So, and I was going to stick one other thing in here. No, no pun intended. Is I didn't think about presenting on. I did a little bit. I wasn't going to present on stick.com here, but hearing everybody's talk and hearing the platform, let me just. Are people familiar with Stick? Yeah. Okay. If you're not, I'm happy to debrief you later. Bottom line is, it seems like Stick actually does have an intersection here, where if you use their platform and what you want is people to actually write a contract, then that can be a very clean collaboration where data are passed back and forth. If that's something that people are open to, by all means, should let them know. I'm actually not officially involved in Stick anymore, although I do have tremendous moral suasion over them. I can't deny that, but they are officially independent of me. I officially have nothing to do with it, but I'm happy to help make introductions and try to make things happen for people.
They're already on our team.
And they're already on the team officially, okay. Okay, but what I'm going to present on is the same concept theoretically about changing future behavior and time inconsistent preferences in two different domains. One is about debt, and the other is about charitable giving. I'll mention at the end, which I put it into the finance section and financial health. And both of these, as people are probably already smelling, are ripped off titles from Save More Tomorrow. So what's the story? So here's Joe. Here's my little vignette on Joe. Joe has $3,000 in credit card debt, paying 34% APR. He has a job that varies. Sometimes he goes overtime, sometimes not even 40 hours. He gets a pension from his job, so that's good. Okay, so we get long-term stuff. That's maybe a little unusual, but it's nice. Joe believes in Social Security. It's a faith-based idea at this point, but he's there. But Joe has no other savings, nothing for bad months at the job, nothing for a new car if his car breaks down, nothing for vacation, for holiday presents. So no other savings, right? Joe is probably a very common person in America these days. What advice should we give Joe? The first thing I want to note is this good or bad? Joe breaking into a savings account. I think in this context, I would argue that's actually probably a good thing, because he's not taking on a loan at a high interest rate to satisfy those short-run, medium-term needs. So I'm calling that, even though he's looking like a frown, that's actually a good thing. I just couldn't find one with a smiley face. But that's the whole point of the kind of borrow less tomorrow. How do we make it so that this person can actually not have to borrow in the future and instead can break open a piggy bank? So what are two options? Pay down debt. Once get out of debt, get Joe to save. I'm going to do a little show of hands. Second option, don't assume you can nudge him later. Get him to start saving now. He'll pay down the debt anyhow. And then by the time he pays down the debt, he actually has some accumulated savings. And then in the future, if he needs to access money, there he is with savings. So who votes with option 1? Who votes with option 2? That's nice, about half-half. This is a very common practice. We see this both in developing countries and the microcredit world, which is kind of how I got my research start. We also see this in domestic cases for financial counseling low-income households. From a finance perspective, there's kind of an easy and obvious answer if you remove the behavioral parts of things, right? You just pay down. Paying down high interest rate debt is a risk-free, really high interest rate return on savings. So it's kind of unambiguous from a purely financial perspective what's optimal. Now the question is this really the best we can do in the long run? So the third option, which I didn't give you, which I think everybody here would agree with, but we don't really have a way of doing this yet, and so this is the idea that we want to see happen, is automate his debt payments to continue to savings payments once he's done paying off his debt. And the point is there's this cliff moment when you pay off your debt that they go, woohoo, we're done. And the whole idea behind number 2 is this idea that there's their captive audience at that moment the counselor's giving them advice. And so they figure, look, I realize it's not the best thing in the world, but I'm going to try to get them to start saving now because I just won't be able to get in their face in 6 months when they do it. So this is all about trying to make it so you don't have to get back in their face from a financial counseling perspective, from that moment you actually have their attention to write a plan. And the key here is some sort of automation. And some sort of pre-commitment. They can change their mind. That's exactly why it's like Save More Tomorrow. It's borrow less tomorrow. Let them change their mind, but set up the process in that certain way. So that's one idea that fits under the borrow less tomorrow. A second, and so to pull this off, it has this close analog. Who do we need as partners? Payroll and payment systems, or a financial institution, or both. It could be. The financial institution, if it's a financial institution that is both lending and saving to the same person, they might not be so excited about doing this. That's actually quite profitable for them. So I tend to think it's more likely to work if your financial institution is either a little bit of a do-gooder, like a large credit union, or is the one holding the checking account, not the credit card debt. So the target is, so I'm sorry, this is the second idea now, this part. So the second idea is targeting households that are paying the minimums on their credit card payments. And then counsel them to increase their future payments. This is exactly the same as Save More Tomorrow in that same exact way. You go to them, say, hey, you can pay off your debt really fast if you start paying more of it. And people say, well, that's great advice, but I don't have the money. And you say, well, you're getting a pay raise in 6 months. How about putting some of that into your minimum payments, something that's exactly like Save More Tomorrow. Now, some of the add-ons, there could be a consequence from the reversal. That consequence could just be making it more costly to do so, or you could do something like inform somebody. You probably don't want to make it a financial penalty. That seems a little bit perverse to let it be a financial penalty, although in theory it could be welfare enhancing. That would be certainly a testable hypothesis. But my instinct is that you probably want to make it something that's a little bit non-financial, like informing somebody. We did a pilot of this where they gave us an email address of who to inform if they deviated, and we emailed them and would tell them, and most people gave their mother. And stuff like that. So this is the second idea. Okay, how am I doing? Okay, so I'm out of time. Well, the last one was on giving. So same basic idea, but doing this the same basic idea is that on charitable giving, a lot of people say they want to give more than they are giving, and it's not just I wish I had more money. Divide that world into two parts. There's people who are consuming more than they would like, where they would be happier if they found some way of giving more. And then there's the wealthy people who give out of income or assets. And for them, it might be a question of going to the hedge fund people or the people in finance and getting them to write soft commitments in June to donate everything over $1 million that they get at the end of the year. And even if it's a soft commitment, it might hugely move the needle on how much they're giving. So, thank you.